to present some tips and hints for ROS installation. In fact, for beginner users, one of the most difficult tasks and challenges that face them is how to install ROS effectively. In this video, I'm going to give some recommendations and suggestions to set up ROS environment on your machine in the most effective way. I will first start by explaining the different ROS versions and distributions available and how to choose among them. Then I will discuss the different options possible to install ROS and will recommend the best options for ROS installation. Of course, anyone who would like to download ROS, he has to go to the ROS wiki pages, and the first question that someone may ask is which version of ROS to install. So to know which versions are available, you can go to the webpage wiki.ros.org distributions, and here you can find all the available distributions since the release of ROS in 2010. Of course, you can see some distributions in green and some others in gray. The one with the gray color have an end of life expired. For example, ROS J Turtle has expired on May 2017. So the color can help you to decide which version is not to consider in your installation, because it is always good to consider versions for which there is still a technical support and for which there is still some upgrades. This is one point. So the second point, here we have 4 versions that are in green colors. So you must know that for ROS distributions, some versions have long time support, LTS, and some other versions do not have long time support. For example, if you look at ROS Indigo, the release date is 2014 and the end date is 2019. So it means 5 years. So Indigo is one of the versions that has a long-term support. Same thing, for example, for ROS Kinetic. It was released in 2016 and will be updated until 2021. So you can see, for example, for ROS Lunar, it was released in 2017, but it will be only maintained until 2019, so only here 2 years. So Lunar is not an LTS version, doesn't have a long time support. However, Kinetic, it has a long time support, and Indigo has a long time support. And we can see that the latest version we do have now, ROS Melodic, it was released on 2018 and will expire in 2023. So basically now we have 3 better choices: Indigo, Kinetic, and Melodic. So you can see that here it is recommended to install Kinetic. You may wonder why. Probably you would say, I would like to download the latest version. So it's true that the latest version would be the most up-to-date. However, usually an older version would be more stable and contains more packages. For example, Melodic, because it was recently released, some of the packages could be still missing in this version and will require some time until they are released. But for ROS Kinetic, since it was released 2 years ago from the time I'm giving this lecture, so it should now be more mature and contains the most comprehensive set of packages. So at this point in time, I would recommend to install ROS Kinetic because this is what is currently recommended by ROS community. However, if you install ROS Melodic or even ROS Indigo, it should be fine for this course and for the tutorials that we are going to present here. I just want to mention that we will be having some exercises with Turtlebot 3, and ROS Indigo doesn't have packages for Turtlebot 3, it has only packages for Turtlebot 2, but ROS Kinetic, it has packages for Turtlebot 3. So this is the recommended version, and of course, maybe later in time, the Melodic version will be the one that is recommended. So this is just to have a brief overview of the different distributions and versions available and how to choose among them. So the main recommendation is to choose a version that has a long time support, okay, because it's going to be updated for 5 years, not like intermediate releases, which are going to be maintained only for 2 years. So the next step is to do the installation. If you want to do the installation, of course, you can type in Google ROS installation, and clicking on the first link is going to redirect you to the latest version. So either you can install Kinetic, which is recommended. It has long time support, LTS, supported until 2021, or ROS Melodic. So I already explained which version to choose. So for example, now you can choose this one or even this one. It's up to you to decide. And here you can select which platform you would like to install. So it is highly recommended to install ROS on Ubuntu. Although it is said to be working on other operating systems like Mac OS and others, Ubuntu is the most stable operating system to install ROS. It can also be installed on other Debian like Jessie, AMD64, ARM64 architectures. So here I assume that you have a Ubuntu. And of course now something that you have to think about is that every version of ROS, it works on a specific version of the Ubuntu Linux operating system. And it is mentioned here. For example, now if we look, we are in the page of ROS Kinetic. So in this case, ROS Kinetic only supports Ubuntu 15.10 and Ubuntu 16.04 and Jessie Debian 8 for Debian packages. So here I would recommend that you consider for Kinetic to first install Ubuntu operating system 16.4, and this is very easy. We can go to Google, okay, Ubuntu 16.04, and because Ubuntu 16.04 is also LTS version, it has also long-time support in Ubuntu, and you can download here the image, install it either on your physical machine or on your virtual machine. I'm going to explain a little bit more the concept of virtual machine and why it is more appropriate for installing ROS. Okay, so if for example we go to another version like the latest one, Melodic, go to Ubuntu. Okay, so here in this page you could not find the information about which Ubuntu version is appropriate for ROS Melodic, but looking to another page here, so it is said that ROS Melodic is primarily targeted for Ubuntu 18.04 Bionic release. Although other Linux systems as well as macOS and Android Windows are supported to a varying degree. So here it will be appropriate to install it on 18.04 or also 17.10. So this is how to choose your operating system and your version. So if you want to install ROS Indigo, this is also possible. In this case, it is only supported by 13.10 and 14.04. So in this case, I would recommend to use 14.04 if you want to work with Indigo. As I already mentioned, choosing any of these three versions would be the same thing, considering that all the tutorials that we are going to develop here work exactly the same on any of the versions. So now you have understood the difference between the different versions of ROS. Now the next question is how to install and where to install the ROS. So here you have two different options. First of all, you can install Ubuntu on a physical machine, and then you proceed to the installation of ROS, as mentioned here in this tutorial. However, this approach is not recommended. The reason is when you work with ROS, it is possible for any kind of reason that your system get problems or get damaged. And in some cases, maybe it will stop to work correctly. And this will require to do a complete reinstallation of the whole system, which is very time consuming and a very tedious operation. So instead of installing Ubuntu and ROS on a physical machine, the other alternative is to install it on a virtual machine. So for example, like in my case, I am working on Mac operating system, and as you can see, I have a Ubuntu virtual machine that is running on top of my operating system. So this can be done by installing a virtual machine software and then installing Ubuntu on this virtual machine and finally installing ROS on the virtual machine. So for example, if you work with Mac OS, in this case you can download Fusion software. So Fusion 10 is a virtual machine. It's not free, but it is very convenient to work with the virtual machine on Mac OS. So you can download it from here, install it, and then you will have an interface similar to this one. Okay, so you can see I have two virtual machines installed. So what you can do in this case, after downloading Ubuntu version of your choice, for example, either you download 16.04 if you want to install ROS Kinetics, or you download 18.04 if you want to install ROS Melodic. After that, you will use the virtual machine software to install the operating system. So you can create add a new virtual machine, and then select the option install from disk or image. You continue. Then the file that you will download from Ubuntu, which is the operating system image, you will drag it and paste it here, and then let the system go until the operating system is fully installed on your virtual machine. Once this is done, you will be able to have a virtual machine similar to this one, in which you can work with it as you are working with a physical machine running Ubuntu operating system. So now if you want to install ROS, you open a terminal and then go to the ROS installation page, and finally follow the steps one by one, all the steps here. So here you are recommended to install the full desktop full version using the command sudo apt-get install. So you just need to copy this command here and run it here. So you can see I can try to run it on my virtual machine. So I have already installed, but it's going to upgrade some of the packages. So you install this version, desktop full, and then you follow the different steps to initialize the ROS dependencies and setting up the environment exactly like it is explained here. And that's pretty much all. You will have ROS Kinetic or any other ROS version installed on your computer, and you can do the tutorials. In a later video, I'm going to explain you how to get the files that we will use in this course. If you are working on Windows machine, in this case, you cannot download VMware Fusion because this is for Mac operating systems, but you can download VM Workstation Pro, which is the other alternative for Windows machine, and the process is exactly the same as the one that I have explained for Mac OS. So if you don't want to bother yourself with installing ROS, and if you want to save your time, and since you are a student in this course, I can give you a virtual machine with ROS Kinetics that contains ROS already pre-installed and all the different files that you will need to follow these tutorials. So if you want to get a copy of the virtual machine, just send me a request through Udemy website, and I will send you the link of the ROS virtual machine so that you can start right away working on the tutorials without spending time on the installation. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In this video, I'm going to show how to install Ubuntu operating system on a virtual machine for a Mac OS operating system. In fact, my advice and recommendation, it is always highly recommended to work with ROS on a virtual machine because you can set up all your environment, install all your applications or your integrated development environment only once, and then you can store the file of the virtual machine in any external hard drive. So later on, in any case when there is a damage that happens to your virtual machine, for example, ROS installation is compromised or something doesn't work fine after some updates and so on, you can easily get back to your working environment by just getting a copy of your saved virtual machine and open it again. However, if you work on a physical machine, if there is any problem with your system, you have to install everything from scratch, and this is sometimes very time-consuming and tedious operation. So this demonstration is going to show how to install Ubuntu 18.04 on a virtual machine. However, the process will be exactly the same if you install any other version of Ubuntu. So the first thing that you have to do is to go to Ubuntu website, www.ubuntu.com/download/desktop. So you will download the desktop version of Ubuntu. You click on download, and then you accept the file and let it download completely on your system. It's going to take a little bit of time depending on the speed of your connection. So after that, if you have Mac operating system, you can use any software of a virtual machine. You can use free options like VirtualBox from Oracle, which is free. But my recommendation is to use Fusion Virtual Machine from VMware, which provides very powerful functionalities. It's very stable, but the problem, it is paid. So once you have Fusion, you open Fusion, and then you will create a new virtual machine. You select the option install from the disk or an image. Then you drag and paste the operating system image that you have downloaded, and then follow the instructions. So you have to set a password for the virtual machine. You can also check the option make your home folder accessible to the virtual machine, and then click continue. So you can choose easy install, but I recommend that you customize your setting before going further. First of all, you have to give a name to the virtual machine, and then you can change the setting of the virtual machine. For example, you would like to increase the number of processors allocated to the virtual machine and the memory, or any other setting like network settings or other. So you can do that. For example, I will choose to have 4 processors and 4 GB of RAM. Of course, this depends on the capability of your machine, and then let it install. So the installation takes a little bit of time, and then the virtual machine having the Ubuntu operating system is going to open, and you can just type your password that you have set initially, and finally you will be logging in to the virtual machine, and you will have a Ubuntu operating system where you can install ROS and configure your environment over there. So after having the virtual machine installed, you can install ROS, install your favorite integrated development environment, like for example Eclipse or Visual Studio Code or any other IDE of your choice. Install all the other libraries that you will need for ROS, for example Turtlebot packages or any packages that you need for sensors, actuators, or anything. And then make a copy of your virtual machine, put it on an external hard drive, just in case if you have any crash or any problem, you can get back your virtual machine up and running without the need to install ROS and all the tools that you have already installed. In this video, I will demonstrate how to install and configure ROS Melodic, the latest version as of July 2018 on Ubuntu operating system. It has to be noted that the installation process is exactly the same for any other version of ROS, Lunar, Kinetic, Indigo, or others. To install ROS, you first need to go to the installation page of ROS. As of today, 2 versions are recommended: ROS Kinetic, which was released on May 2016, and ROS Melodic, which was released on May 2018. Note that both versions have long-time support, LTS. In this video, we will install ROS Melodic. ROS Melodic can be installed on different operating systems. We will choose Ubuntu operating system in our tutorial. The first thing to know is that ROS Melodic is only supported by Ubuntu 18.04. which is Ubuntu Bionic. So make sure that you have installed Ubuntu Bionic before starting the installation. In the previous video, I have shown how to install Ubuntu Bionic in a virtual machine on Mac operating system. It has to be noted that every version of ROS is supported by a particular version of Ubuntu. Then open a terminal and copy the first command that will accept software from ROS packages repository. After that, you need to set up your keys by using the second command. Before starting the installation, you need to make sure that your Debian index is up to date by executing sudo apt-get update. Let the system update your Debian index. Now, your system is ready to install ROS. There are different available options. It is recommended to install the desktop full option, which contains most of the important and required libraries in ROS. Let's do that. This operation will add a little bit more than 700 megabytes on your hard drive. The operation takes time, so wait until it completes. Great, now ROS is installed on your system. However, there are still a few more things to do. Before you can use ROS, you need to initialize ROSDEP. ROSDEP allows you to easily install system dependencies for sources you want to compile, and it is required to run some core components of ROS. Then write the command ROSDEP update. Congratulations, you have now ROS up and running. To enable ROS in your system, you need to source the setup.bash of the ROS workspace. Doing so, you will be able to run ROS commands. To make this effective permanently, you need to add the command source/opt/ros/melodic/setup.bash into your .bash RC file so that it is enabled automatically whenever you open a new terminal. So you do not have to manually type it every time in a new terminal. The last step is to install tools and other dependencies to build ROS packages. Now, having this done, you are ready to start working with ROS. After finishing the installation, you should create a workspace where to put your proper projects and ROS packages. For this, you need to create a new workspace in the home directory, and this workspace will be used later to put all your ROS projects and packages. To do so, go to the home directory and open the terminal. Create a new folder called catkin.ws for Catkin workspace. And inside this folder, you create a source file where to put your projects. Then compile this new workspace using Catkin make. Your workspace is now ready to develop projects in it. To enable your workspace as the default workspace, you have to source the setup.bash of this workspace in the .bash RC file. So open .bash RC file and add the following command inside of it. Now your workspace is ready, and you can type roscd to make sure that it is the default workspace. In this video, I'm going to talk about which integrated development environment would be better to use with ROS. Usually, especially for new users, they face the difficulty to decide which development environment to use to develop with ROS. There are different alternatives, so I'm going to discuss a few of them in this video. The first possible option is to use Eclipse. So here, when you open Eclipse, you need to open it in the Catkin workspace. So you have to choose the Catkin workspace here, and then you have to open it here. In the beginning, when I started to develop with ROS, I used to use Eclipse very often. It's a very nice development environment. However, it's a little bit slow and a bit heavy. So there are other alternatives I'm going to show a little bit later. So you can actually develop in Python, you can develop in C++. However, there are some configurations that you need to do to configure Eclipse to work with your workspace. Let me make a demonstration on a new workspace. So I'm going to close this one because it's already configured. So let's create a new workspace just to test how to open Eclipse with it. I'm going to call it my ROS workspace /src. So now I'm going to, and then Catkin make. So now our workspace is created. So after creating the workspace, we need to create an Eclipse project inside. And for this, we're going to use the following command. We execute this command here. And now we have an Eclipse project created. So now I'm ready to use Eclipse to work in the new Catkin workspace. So I'm going to open Eclipse now. And then I have to browse and select the new workspace. Now you can see when you open the workspace, there is no project. So we need to import the project. Use import, we go to general, existing projects into workspace, and then we have to browse and select the root directory. So here pay attention that the root directory is the build directory. So we have to select build, press OK, and then finish. And then we will see that we have, this is our source directory. For the moment, we don't have any project here. We can create a new package, for example. So let's create a new package. I need to go to the source folder, and then I'm going to create a package, beginner tutorials. So you can give it any name. So the package is now created, and then we need to do a Catkin make. So I use the shortcut CM, which is an alias that I made to the command Catkin make. So I do Catkin make now, and our project is now compiled. So if I refresh, we're going to find our package beginner tutorial here. So now you can create any file. You can create a file in Python. Okay, for example, you can create a file listener.py, and write your code over here. You can create CPP files. You have the cmakes.txt. Now you can develop your program, or you can run your program using Eclipse. So this is how to configure Eclipse to work with the ROS environment. Another editor that you can also use is Sublime. Sublime is a lightweight editor. So actually you can take your whole ROS project and drag it into the Kate workspace. So for example, here we have different packages. I'm going to take this one, bring it here, and then you have all the different files available. Okay, so for example, you can program in C++, and you can also program in Python with a nice layout. So now, for example, if you want to execute any program, for example, I want to execute the talker and the listener. Now I am in the package RIOT ROS training. So I'm going to make, first of all, ROS core, and then, of course, ROS run, RIOT ROS training, and then talker.py or talker. So of course you can modify using the Sublime editor, and then you can run using a terminal. So with Sublime there is no integrated terminal, and that's why my actually favorite editor is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is another alternative that you can use in order to program with ROS. It supports C++, Python, and different programming languages. Okay, and it works pretty much in the same way as Sublime. So for example, if I open a new window and I would like to put some projects here, I will do it the same way. I'm going to take this one, for example. Let me take GATEC edu, another one. I will put it here, and then we'll have all the files. Okay, so you have, this is listener, this is talker.py. And the good thing that I like here is that you have an integrated terminal. So you can run your code over here, integrated. So another alternative is to open another external terminal like this and put it probably here or in any appropriate place. But also it is very convenient to use this integrated terminal whenever you want to run some programs. Like for example, what you can do, you can, we have already a ROS core running here, and then we can put all our commands here. So I can make ROS topic list. So I have a ROS core running, and then I can run my programs from here. Let me run again the talker.py, and then it's going to run. So this integrated terminal is a nice feature in Visual Studio Code. The layout is also nice and simple to use, and it is lightweight as compared to Eclipse, for example. It is much lighter weight. So I would recommend to use Visual Studio Code, and of course you can use any editor of your choice. These are just some suggestions that may help you select an appropriate development environment for your ROS projects.